Three, two, one. Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm Jon Binnie. Welcome along to my podcast today. We'll be talking about all things shadow work, including some of our experiences through my training courses and beyond. And with me, I have two special guests. I have Viviane Heller. Hello, Viviane.
Hi,
Welcome.
John.
And hello to Chloe Rose. Hello.
Hello.
Um, I'm really excited to see where our chat takes us. And I thought, since I'm always asking people questions, perhaps you guys would like to start with asking me a question, and maybe it'll help us ease into some of our experiences. So I'll let one of you guys go first and ask me something.
What does shadow work mean to you, John?
Wonderful. You've done this before. You've done podcasts before, right? I love that. What does shadow work mean to me? So I feel in my heart that I see my heart a bit like this kind of like sphere, right? And inside of it, there's like loads of happy John feelings and joy and love and all these things. And most of the time, day to day, that's me. I'm in my happiness. I'm like happy, joyous John, joyful John. And but in my heart, and it's funny as I say this, I can feel a little bit in my heart. There's some shadows in there, right? And they're the parts of my heart that my heart's like, it's okay, John, you can just be happy. We'll just get this little area and we'll just make it a bit darker and you won't see what's going on in there and you won't feel what's going on in there. So we'll just leave it to the side.
Mhm.
And so most of the time, I'm like, yay, I'm still happy and joyful. And then something happens, like I'm triggered, or I suddenly remember briefly something that's in that shadow. And it almost like it explodes in me. It's just like, oh, in that moment, I just feel like lost in that darkness. I feel very low. Sometimes it's shameful feelings, like the very lowest vibration feelings. Um, and I know I can feel I'm about to share a shadow in a minute. I'm not sure what it is, but in those moments, the shadow work is an opportunity. Like when you find a shadow, it feels horrible in its first
Mhm.
instance, but it's a real opportunity for growth and learning. And so it's all those parts of our heart that are hiding from us day to day that are often just, first of all, wanting a little bit of love to be seen and then at least safely felt and maybe what feels like a little bit unsafely felt. And
Mhm.
then just this kind of moving on. We don't need to just fix everything and pretend like, oh, I'm always going to have no shadows left. I get rid of all my shadows. Oh, I got rid of all my shadows. Um, that would make a great clip from this video. But I don't think that'll ever happen for me. I feel like it's just part of me that I like to like do it at least once a week, look like scan across my heart, shine a light a bit like a lighthouse, and then find something. I would say one of the shadows I felt today was walking my dog Patch. He sometimes gets a sore back, and it's because between him and I walk him the most out of the family. He's not neutered, and he constantly stops and sniffs, and it's like it triggers me so much. And yet I'm like, hi, it's John, meditation guy, right? So I'm like, seriously,
Mhm.
John, it's okay to just stop and allow your dog to sniff and wee or whatever dogs do. And even though it's every meter or so in a mile or two's walk, I still find myself getting triggered. And it's
Mhm.
not his fault, right? He's
Yeah.
having the time of his life as a little dog doing doggy things. It's my shadow to process, um, and to allow myself to often what's happening is, I'll stop by a tree and there's a robin or a squirrel or a pigeon, but I just want to keep walking, and it's like the magic is trying to say, hey, we're here too. So that's maybe the longest answer you've ever heard to what's shadow work, but that's what it is to me.
Mm. Nice. Thank you. I think it is a complicated topic that might have been hijacked a bit by social media as well, you
Yeah.
know. Gotta do your shadow work, face your shadows. And
Mm.
yes, it's great and it's wonderful and it's important work, but it's also it can be quite misleading and confusing. You know, some people might think, oh, facing my shadows means that I can do all this dark stuff and it go down a dark path. It could easily be be read in that way. Um, But yeah, it's I think it's about understanding our own patterns, behavioral patterns,
Mhm.
Trauma is an important one. Not everyone has trauma. Some people have very intense trauma. Understanding that, and then I totally agree with what you said, John. It's not about getting rid of the shadow, but it's
Yeah.
actually becoming really aware of it, almost like hyper aware of it, so that we can accept it as a part of ourselves. And I
Mm.
think that is a big, I don't like saying problem or issue, but it is something that we need to be aware of, is this wanting to get rid of it and wanting to get rid of the darkness and expel the darkness and be so perfect and clean and bright and light, when actually the more that you read about maybe prophets or people who've been on, you know, many, many lifetimes of spiritual journeys, they have just learned how to hold the balance of the dark and the light from a place of unconditional love and compassion.
Mhm.
And from myself personally, coming from a background of addictions,
Mhm.
and cycles of that, I was constantly falling to that distraction
Yeah.
rather than actually saying, hold on a minute, why does this make me feel sad? Why does this make me feel so irritated that I just want to punch something? And being that best friend or that mother or father figure that I always needed, being that for myself. Because
Mm.
once you actually like start, it's like start when you start asking the questions, you'll be really surprised with what the answers are. And then it's like, oh, that doesn't really matter. That's kind of funny, or that's kind of cute. Or, oh, actually, that was my fault. Maybe I should say sorry. You know, and it's then we can laugh about it and just pour some love into it and realize that we're not horrible people, that we're just human. So for me,
Mhm.
that's shadows, is actually just embracing it and becoming more aware of the sides of us that we ignore or we hide in a cupboard.
Correct.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's wonderful. How about you, Viviane?
Well, before I say something, I have my question for you, which would
Oh,
be,
touche.
what advice would you give to those who are new, starting their shadow work?
Um, yeah, some of the founding principles I'd get started with are no one can tell you your shadows,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
if like, and
Mhm.
that's a massive red flag, and
Yes.
you touched on that a bit earlier on, Chloe. Like you were saying, like this need to kind of like want to fix shadows as well. And
Mhm.
what is it about us humans? We just want to fix everything. And I used to think it was just a male thing, and maybe it's more dominant in males. I don't know, but we're just like, why do we want? It's like you could literally give any human a problem, and eventually they will have figured out some way in their life how to fix it. They can't. Why can't we just let a problem be a problem?
Mhm.
It's okay. You know,
Mhm.
like this plant behind me, it's artificial. It's never going to be alive. Sorry, plant. Sorry, you're never going to be alive. But it's like I'll give it consciousness and a name, but I can't make it a real plant. Um, and it's okay. It's just okay. Um, and I think so. My advice is, first of all, don't listen to others.
Mhm.
When you are getting feelings of shadows, so things like great things are triggers, right? Triggers are like
Yeah.
something that happens. So my dog stops for like the 11th time in 2 minutes for a wee. And I'm like, and I can feel it building up inside of me, this feeling. It's not my dog's feeling, right? It's not no one else
Mhm.
in the world is saying, hey John, like you must have this emotion. It's something in me builds up. And then I'm like, when it comes up into your heart, that's that light of your consciousness shining on it. And just
Yes.
allow yourself to witness it. And you might think that it is, a small example for me, but when it happens 3 times a day, maybe hundreds of times every day, it's like this
Mhm.
constant shadow to face. Some of, like Chloe also said, some of those shadows are huge, right? Some of them are life-changing traumas that we've
Mhm.
had, and
Mhm.
it can feel very vulnerable and scary to allow any light to be shone on it. We might
Yes.
even have like post-traumatic stress around that trauma,
Mhm.
and that we're really scared of going there. And I would say that um, you don't need to do it alone. You can go and get help, right? There's people trained that can help
Mhm.
you, whether it's like a counselor, a therapist, whether it's someone like us that can help you with a broad range of emotional and metaphysical and spiritual challenges as well,
Mm-hmm.
that someone can help guide you through that process, and you don't need to do it all at once.
Yes.
And that very first thing you do of shining the light on it, um, is the biggest, most powerful step. Because
Yes.
as soon as you know it's a problem in your life, it's it's almost like that's all the shadow often wants to be known. It's like this massive dark elephant in the room that just wants to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you see it, you realize, well, this is why I've been squeezing around this elephant in the room all the time. Or, there's so much in my life that I'm trying to avoid. Like, Chloe, you're talking about addictions. I had a lot of addictions as well, uh,
Mm-hmm.
up until whatever, like alcohol, especially up until about 6 years ago now. Um, and so we'll hide from it, right, and deny.
Yes.
And there are some of the things you can look out for in triggers. Like if something triggering you, like politics, global leaders,
Mm-hmm.
whatever's putting you into a fear place, there's a shadow somewhere inside of you that is reflecting that, right? It's like being triggered. It's like,
Yes.
oh, help! Like I want to be seen. Um, so yeah, there's some of the first parts, and then some of the other practices. Like someone asked me today, what is holding space? I think that's a great practice. What I do with the shadow is that
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like I take it out in a little like golden bubble out my heart, and I look at it and go, oh, I see, John, that you get frustrated when your little dog Patch is stopping a lot when you're walking. And then I
Mm-hmm.
look at that feeling safely. So it's outside. I always imagine it outside of my heart, and I feel like the size and shape and the vibration. And I look at it, and it's just so powerful for as long as you can to safely observe it, and then send some love,
Mm-hmm.
into the shadow. And then a really helpful practice I found is, and I don't always get it in the right order, but the Oponopono prayer. So
Yes.
roughly
Wonderful.
the words of along the lines of,
Yes.
thank you, I forgive you, I'm sorry, I love you, and
Yes.
send that light into it. And then you get to do what you want with it. You either put it back in your heart, or you could release it. You could release it out
Mm-hmm.
to the universe to never come back to you, or whatever you like.
Wonderful. I love that you mentioned the Ho Oponopono prayer because it is one of the um, um, tools, I'll call that I use to tackle the my shadows. Most of my shadows come from trauma experiences, and it's really difficult because when you have a trauma, like you don't want to go back there, you don't want to revisit, but it's part of the process. And once you identify the through the emotions that you experiencing, you identify uh, why this is triggering you so much, and it's so difficult to be in that space. But so I'll say anyone working uh, with their shadows is just to be patient because it takes time. It's a process, and not really easy, and it's uncomfortable to be in that position. I'm revisiting this. Okay, why is this triggering me so much? But you have to see that you're resisting so much. That's why you trigger because you don't want to see it. And once you see um, the the true issue that is bothering you so much that you've been trying to hide, that's when the real shadow work begins because that was brought to light. And I say that it takes a long time to be really self-aware because you're putting so much energy into covering it up. It's so much easier and faster to just push it aside and cover it up. However, with me, like meditation it's a tool that helped me. The Ho'oponopono prayer, a lot of time spending time alone, like in your whether doing something creative. So time that you can really feel your emotions. And what Chloe was saying that about accepting and sending love to it and integrating once you are aware of it and you accept it, that's where the real healing will begin to, you know, because it's integrating that is not about hiding and deleting, removing that part of yourself. Is about accepting it and then sending love to it. But it's a lot of work.
Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
I'll add on to that if that's okay.
Yes,
Please do.
sure.
I think what you said is true. It is like this multi-layered process. And
Mm-hmm.
the more you do it, the more you realize how complicated it is.
Yes,
But at the same time, the more you do the shadow work, the more you do start picking up on things more
yes,
easily, I found.
that's true.
And it does take, initially, it takes a huge amount of bravery to face up
Mm-hmm.
to those the big pillars of the childhood, right? That's usually where some of the main
Yeah.
shadows come from. It takes bravery, but I can promise from my own experience, everyone that's watching this, or everyone that watches the recording of this, it is never as bad when you actually face it as your mind tells you that it's going to be.
Yes.
Because we can harbor so much resentment against a
Mhm.
person or a situation, so much so that we're just channeling this like hatred and anger and frustration in our body and all of this stuff. But then when we finally face that situation, it's like this a whole soul body breath of fresh air. It's
Yes.
like, oh, okay, finally I can see from another perspective.
Mhm.
But it is painful, but it's far less painful than a lifetime of being numb to
True.
emotions, a lifetime of having relationships that are in conflict due to
Mhm.
attachments that we've made in our past. You know, that was one of the big things for me, was facing up to the fact that I've never met my dad, and he ran away from my mum when she was pregnant, and I was like, oh, he's such a beep beep, and
Similar experience
so much
as you.
anger, so much anger. And I was like, that's
Mhm.
why I've had all of these toxic relationships. It's all
Yeah.
his fault. And then, when you actually face that and just allow yourself to cry and just allow your heart
Mhm.
to bleed, eventually now I'm like, I actually feel sorry for him because he's never
Yeah.
met his daughter. I'm like, wow, what a sad place to be in.
Mhm.
So it facing these things without distracting from them just opens you up to a completely
Mhm.
different perspective. And I would also say with shadow work, try not to attach to a person or a situation as well, because that
Mhm.
can become a part of an identity too. Think of it more as just like a little pattern or a tendency, or just like a cute annoying like sibling that's
Mhm.
just there with you all the time
Yes.
playing tricks on you. Yeah, because otherwise I've found that I will start getting too in my mind and trying to figure out, oh, why am I acting this way around certain people, and being like, oh, it's this
Mhm.
because of this and that, and all of these things. And just one more thing I wanted to add, John, just to say like about practices and how you can start doing it. And I'll just share an experience because it might resonate with people. I went through a time, it was about 8 years ago, and I got really, really depressed, like to the point
Mhm.
where I just didn't want to be around any of my friends anymore. I was really isolating, pushing people away, drinking a lot, just like really just lost connection to myself and to life. And one day I was just like, something just said to me, write down all of the things that are causing you this shame, because it felt like if you can think of a heavy emotion, like shame is pretty low on the scale of low vibrational energy. I would say it's almost at the bottom. And I just wrote down, and I ended up writing 12 pages of situations in my life that caused me to feel shameful. And
Wow.
even that writing down of it all and just seeing it in front of me, and I was like, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault, but it's my responsibility now. So now I'm going to
Mhm.
make a change. And it's almost just like once we have that in front of us, that puts the power back into our hands. Whereas
Yeah.
when we're avoiding it, we're giving all of our power away.
Beautiful. I love that. We have similar father issues, but
Oh,
but on the note of, I love why you talked about releasing, and um, I feel that it also takes so much energy to hide
Yeah.
those aspects of you and to push it aside, even though the process of the shadow work it's difficult at times. Yes, it becomes easier to notice the triggers as they come along, and with time to accept those parts of you. It's not the energy you put into hiding that part of you. It's really detrimental to your mind, body, and soul, and it's just really. Um, I really hope that that encourages more people to start their shadow work and continue with their journey.
Mm.
no, definitely. Thank you, both of you, for sharing just
Mhm.
really powerful experiences, and yeah, holding space for those. Like it
Yes.
is so it's it's so powerful to both share vulnerably and then also to
Mhm.
share, you know, your actions you've taken. And it's I do it. It might even be a shadow, but I love sharing.
Mhm.
And it's almost like like you're saying, Chloe, it's like the biggest thing you can do with these heaviest emotions of shame is share. And even not in your case, like you didn't, your initial reaction wasn't to share with other people. It's like getting it out of you and writing it down. So powerful. The strongest, and you guys know this, my strongest shadow that's dominated this life and other lifetimes has been lack. And
Mhm.
it's a fear, lack often connected with money, but then also like food and water,
Yeah.
just the general theme of abundance in my life. And it's dangerous, right? It's a really dangerous fear to have because it manifests in me as me. I will try and compensate. Like Viviane, you're talking about the energy, and it's like I
Yeah.
exhaust myself being hyper productive to somehow fill this like emptiness. It feels like just below at the bottom of my heart and in my solar plexus,
Mhm.
like this bombarding this with like, it's okay, Jon, keep doing another video, and then you'll feel you've got abundance in your life. Like, why does
Mhm.
that? Why does that help? Um, and also the energy of what I put out. Like if I'm in a lack mentality, it has this beautiful, virtuous, negative cycle, right? Which is it's like this Jacob's ladder where I'm saying to the world, I'm like on a video going like, "Hi, I'm Jon Binnie. Buy my stuff, please buy my stuff. Please buy a session with me. Please buy my training. Please."
Mhm.
Because I'm amazing. I hope you believe that because I'm really desperate. And and that's the energy, right? And then when everyone looks at that and they're like, maybe that would be a funny video actually. I should do that one day. But when you're almost like it, shadows are also a kind of a lie to ourselves, right? It's like a sometimes a gentle, misleading, or like we're lying just a little bit to ourselves. And in that, when you, especially to our communities, when we say, here's a beautiful new offering to you, but the energy behind it is your shadow or your shadow's present in that, they feel it too. Everyone feels
Yeah.
it, right? Just like you're scrolling past on social media, those adverts with people with like their eyes are kind of dead and they're literally like, buy my thing. I think it's interesting. Hey, stop scrolling. It's interesting. And you're like, is this AI? Is this human? I don't know. And they don't seem to be enjoying
Mm.
it. And you just kind of keep going past or trying to figure out how to stop it coming back again. Excuse me. But yeah, I think that's a wonderful way of looking at it as well. Is um, what are the most powerful things? And for when we were doing the higher self intermediate training together, this came up. Chloe, you found this very thing in me, and we're saying, hey, Jon, there's still some more work for you to do in a past life. So I booked you in for a session, which isn't that long away, is it?
No.
To go to that past life and or lives, and I think that's another really interesting way. I don't feel like
Mhm.
past lives totally are separate to us because still part of our souls they're often parts, you know, in terms of responsibility, part of our hearts now. It just means that the patterns existed repeatedly through other lifetimes, and sometimes more context, you know, that we need to go right back and find out at the very heart of it. So of course, I'm slightly anxious, but also very excited.
Be good. Yeah, and I think sometimes we in this life we carry blueprints that need to be completed, or that a more deep version of the lesson needs to be learned, right?
Yeah.
Not a bad thing or a good thing. And I thought I would carry this on about what you were saying about people on social media, but also people that we meet in our lives that do have that glazed over look. And I think this is an important thing for us to talk about, because this has come up for all of us recently, and it's something that's coming up in conversations for me with a lot of people at the moment, which is about entity attachments. And it's so intrinsically linked to shadow work, because when we get triggered, and then when we allow that trigger to plant an insidious seed within us, and then perhaps we fall into the traps of alcohol, watching porn, or getting really addicted to food, and finding ways of, it's almost like feeding it, right? Feeding it rather than flooding it with love and saying, not today. That is almost like an open invitation for negative energy attachments to jump right in. And that's when, you know, 2 weeks down the line, we might be like, oh my God, like I'm really fatigued. What is going on? I can hardly drag myself out of bed in the morning. Why can't I think properly? Why have I got all this brain fog? Like it's a scary topic, but it's very real, and it makes shadow work a really important practice, because it actually helps to build up our strength and our resilience. Because when we can recognize the pattern before it turns into an actual negative entity attachment, we can be like, not today. You know, in Christianity, it would be considered the devil. You know, it spans across every different belief, whether it's New Age or ancient. It's all the same, you know, we are literally making space for that entity to enter into us if we're not sitting with it, slowing down and just making space for it, so that we can be like, this isn't me, this is an old version of me, or this is just a little troll that's coming up and sneaking up behind me and playing with me. So I think that's just, yeah, an important thing to address, not to scare anyone who watches this. I hope that it empowers you to know that sometimes if you do cycle into depression, it's actually not you. It's an entity that has taken over your body, and it
Yeah.
can be removed, so don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was gonna ask, it's such an important point. It's like there's a dark side of spirituality. I mean, we would often say dark sides of religion and things that are more established in our lives, but the perpetual and infinite new age, because I guess it's just always new by its definition, and spirituality, it's like there's these and I see it in some, I've seen maybe more worryingly at scale in some of the client sessions where we're talking about different locations and different not individuals, but like what's happening at scale is like, you know, if you can imagine it, there's shadow, there's dark of it. Just like the tallest buildings, most beautiful monuments in the world have shadows, right? When the sun shines on them. And we see this like the dark side of spirituality is like a lot of bypassing, because it has huge amounts of terminology that support itself, that support the bypassing. And I'd love to hear some of your examples. Like I've heard things like, some things that said to me is like, oh, you seem quite stressed, you should meditate. Um, or I get told, just, you know, that's something you should do some work on. Is this a shadow for you, Jon? Maybe you should face that shadow. And and it, you know, the energy behind some of it as well. It always feels like, just stop talking, Jon, and go and, you know, go and deal with your mess. Because I'm telling you there's mess that you have to deal with. And even worse, saying, you don't have any mess. There's no such thing as darkness. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as the devil. There's no such thing. And it's like, there's no such thing as what? Like, of all the things I've learned in the last 7 years since my awakening is like there there is, never say never. There's I would never claim that something doesn't exist in this universe, but absolutely continue on a continued journey of wonder and mystery and magic, that there is all these incredible things to discover. And that's always a red flag for me when someone says, no, that's not real. And you're like, well, who made you God?
I
um,
think it's, oh, sorry to
no,
interrupt.
go ahead. I was going to ask what your experiences are.
I was going to say it's quite easy to see that there is God and there is a devil when you just look around you, right?
Mm.
Just look around at what's going on in the world. There is clearly an imbalance. There's light and dark forces that always exist. They exist in duality. It just so happens at the moment they are tipping up and down quite quite violently. But yeah, you can't be in denial of that, right? Because in true heart open centered compassion, we want everyone to be equal, right? So it's not okay to pretend that wars aren't happening, and it's not okay to pretend that there isn't hunger going on globally. We have to actually be open and embrace all of that. So it's almost like we have to do the individual shadow work, but then there's also the collective shadow, and holding the space for that, but doing the individual work helps to support us in being a much lighter, brighter vessel, so that we can actually hold onto the collective darkness and heaviness with more grace and more understanding.
Love that.
Definitely. I was going to ask Viviane, because Chloe brought up the subject of negative entities, and I love talking about it, but I'd love to ask you, Viviane, what's your definition, or how would you describe negative entities, attachments to people that are maybe new to the subject?
Negative entity. Well, I would say to start, if you have no boundary or any kind of protection around you, you are vulnerable to having a negative entity or attachment. And negativity and negative thoughts and poor spiritual hygiene, all of those things make you more even more vulnerable to a negative attachment and negative entity. I like to meditate and protect my energy often and ground my energy often. And I am make choices on a daily basis to stay away from what I consider negative, whether it's people always with that non-stop negative talk, or lately in the news, and just things that I know are not good for my own health, my mental health, my overall well-being. And I know that some people don't necessarily believe in, oh, there's a negative attachment or there's this negative entity, but you feel it. You feel how it affects you, it affects your energy, and just because you don't see it right in front of you, it doesn't mean it's not happening and it doesn't exist. And it's something to be taken seriously. I love practicing the grounding and connecting to source and the bubble of protection to protect my energy. I've seen uh, people criticizing, I don't want this bubble around me because I want to be able to send love. I want to be able to send love to others. I still send love to others and good intention to others, and I want to send the good things, nothing extra that is not wanted. Or so I would say take that seriously, because your energy affects you more than it's everything. You are energy, everything. So keep your energy clean and protect it. So like I said, I've heard talks of people, no, I don't believe in that. There's no attachments. There's no negative energy. This is just made up and is what it's not. I'll say take that seriously.
Wow. And yeah, that latter you say, it's like how does the darkness get its power? From denial, from the light
Yeah.
denying there's dark. And
Mm-hmm.
I always feel that the darkness is superpower is illusion, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to convince us that it's more powerful than light, and that light is inherently more powerful than dark because it
Mm-hmm.
shines light into darkness. And yet without the two, we wouldn't have stars in our night sky because literally there'd be no light or dark, there'd be
Yes.
no contrast. It'd be a dull universe anyway if there was no dark and light. And there's a balance, and it just takes one. It takes like a candle or a star to shine up, to light up massive, billions and billions of miles of empty darkness around it. Um, but yeah, I totally agree, and I'm curious. I remember some of my personal first experiences with negative attachments.
Mm-hmm.
But before I just go off and rabbit on and share that, maybe Chloe, you could tell us about some of your first interactions or like awarenesses of negative attachments.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it's only really been in the last few years that I've been fully aware of this actually, as I've been getting more deep into it. I've always, since I've been a child, I've never called myself religious, but I've always believed in God and the devil.
Mhm.
I've always felt that to be true in my heart, even just as a representation of kind of good and bad energy.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think it was when I got to early 20s and the drug addiction got really bad, like really, really bad. And this was something I had a realization of actually recently when I went to Peru and I had the time in the jungle and a lot of stuff came up from from
Mm.
my past and time to see it from a bird's eye perspective. But it was, being in that environment that I was in, which was going out all the time and partying and being in that group, I realized that it was literally like dark forces, almost like black magic, controlling this
Mm-hmm.
web of drug taking and objectifying women and
Mm.
keeping us trapped where I know that that was wrong, but I was in
Mm-hmm.
it and I was obsessed with it. It's almost this like feeding, like you see in horror movies. You can imagine literally like flesh-eating demons, and it sounds really dramatic, but it was that realization that I was like, all of a sudden, well, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And it was just that kind of wake up call of being like, something is taking over me, and if I don't take control of it, then it might completely take over me. So I think that was my first realization with drugs and alcohol. And then normally I'm quite wary now. For me, it usually comes in like chronic fatigue that lasts
Mm-hmm.
for more than about 3 days in a row, because sometimes hormones and things happen, or if I am holding space, a big space, then it can take a few days to recover. So I say more than 3 days. And then if I get extreme brain fog to the point where I can't even like sit down and do anything, then I'm like, okay, something is really wrong, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
reach out to you, John, or I have another couple of healers who I work with. I also have some plants that I work with that can really clear out my system as guided by people. But yeah, I have to always reach out when that happens, and I always ask for advice from people who I trust. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
really important thing to do when you feel like you've got an attachment. It's actually good to share that with someone you trust.
I
Yeah.
love that. It's like a web of light, like a comparison in comparison to the web of darkness that you were
Yeah.
talking about earlier. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of challenges and addictions in my late teens and early 20s with a range of different drugs, and mainly marijuana was like my go-to. And but alcohol crept in, right? And it was like in there in the background and continued on for a lot of my life, and as I said, until maybe about six or so years ago. And in those patterns, I my very first experience of a negative attachment was it was also my experience of first experience of energy work, and I had there's whole videos about it, so I won't go into detail. But you, I was working, full time Amazon. I was very stressed. My son was having night terrors. Of course, none of this is,
Mm-hmm.
none of this is disconnected. It's all for a reason. And I remember sleeping on my son's floor. Um, I This was like 1 or 2 a.m. as he was like waking up screaming as he often did, and I was like putting him back to bed. And I just remember lying back down, and I booked someone. Her name's Lotus Leo. I booked her for, she called it an energy reading session, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Reiki was the first thing she was doing. And as I went, I remember as I closed my eyes, this is about 1 in the morning, I just heard her saying, "It's okay, it's me. I'm starting now." And that kind of surprised me a little bit. And then I went to sleep, and I felt very reassured. And then I woke up the next day having had 3 hours sleep or so,
Mm-hmm.
and this huge change had happened in me. It felt like my whole chest was clear. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
carrying this burden. It reminded me a lot when I used to smoke a lot. Of like I'd wake up in the morning, and I used to tell people it felt like a baby elephant was like sat on my lungs and chest. And
Yeah.
now that even then I'm not sure how many years I've been running. Maybe it must be close to 23, 24 years running every
Mm-hmm.
day, well, every weekday, that I'm so used to having like a lot of lung capacity that when you don't have that,
Yeah.
it was like, oh. And so when I saw the video of what Lotus Leo had done on me, she found that in the video. She's saying there's this horrible. It's when you're in all these meetings, John, at work, and you're just absorbing other people's energy, and you're not speaking your truth, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
being fierce. Like you need to be fierce in your for yourself, for your boundaries, and for the great achievements that you've got. But instead, you just sat there and you're kind of taking all these hits, and it was
Mm-hmm.
feeding the beast inside me. And I could only describe it as, like you were saying, Chloe, when you're a bit distracted or you can't get focus and brain fog and attention, that it felt like I'd been on holiday on vacation for like 3 months or something. And yet all I'd had is 3 hours sleep, uh,
Mm-hmm.
physically. And yeah, that was my first encounters of realizing both the energy work is real. This was all done
Yes.
remotely from Lotus Leo somewhere in Central America or so, and me in Scotland. And then all while I was sleeping, and I realized this isn't just real, it's like incredibly powerful both ways, both the dark
Yes.
side of it and the light side of it.
Yes. Just because, like I said, just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and
Yeah.
it doesn't work. Yes.
Absolutely. Um, and I also, for people that are perhaps listening to this and they're becoming aware of negative entities for the first time, I'd also perhaps introduce some of our experiences of those beings that we see and experience in our work. So we all
Mm-hmm.
do variations of psychic and energy work. Um, what was maybe Chloe? What was like the first entity you saw, like on someone else that you started to work on?
Mm-hmm.
For me, like I see it more in the person, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
rather than seeing the entity, I see it in the person. And it's and that what you said about the chest, oh, it's so much because it's this like stiffness, and it for me it feels like claws
yeah,
around the front or the back of the heart, like this real like horrible claws that are just like
yeah,
I can feel that in people and see that in people, and the glazing over of the eyes, and then
Mm-hmm.
but more so it's the personality, like the changes in people's personality who you know, or even who you've just met a couple of times, and the way that they speak and project themselves, it's like that's not you. I know that's not you, because it's almost like this stubbornness and this deflective. So what you were saying earlier, John, about the bypassing, I sadly believe that a lot of people who are probably quite successful in the spiritual industry have big energy attachments because they're just doing
Yeah.
it for ego or success. Perhaps they
Mhm.
started with good intentions and it's spiraled. But one
Yeah.
of the main kind of entity things I see is that it feels attacking because it's like a defense mechanism, you know, like you're throwing a tennis ball at a wall and it's just coming straight back and whacking you. That's the entities that I've faced most often. It's really hard to penetrate verbally, and that's why the energy work is so powerful, because it allows you to go in there and shift the energy. But yeah, it's almost like you try and talk as a human, but you're just getting deflected straight back, and nothing goes in, you know, nothing is received on a human or conscious level.
Yeah. Wow. How about you, Viviane?
When it comes to noticing the entity, I feel it in my body too. I feel the dark. I feel the heaviness, tightness could be on the chest, on the heart space. And I, through the energy work, I've seen claws, someone's shoulders. I've seen dark patches when looking at the heart space or the solar plexus. But it is the feeling is intense, you know, that the heaviness, that pressure. And I know that doing certainly for face to face, the eyes are a big uh, telling of that. And I agree with what Chloe said, the behavior, like you can tell that this is not normal. This is not how this person really would be
Yeah.
reacting. And I love also when we hear the feedback from those that we helped. And it's so amazing because they also feel it in their body. They feel the relief when it's removed, and they're it's a wonderful change. Just think about when you walk in a room and you know that you can feel like when the energy is heavy and is not pleasant, and you also feel like when you walk in the same room and wow, it feels light and airy and beautiful and
Yeah.
welcoming. So yes, it's I love that when we help people and we get that uh, knowing that they are experiencing that and feeling much better and lighter.
Oh,
I love
likewise.
that.
What you're saying, Chloe, like when you deny this, it's almost like, and you talked about people, becoming famous and popular. Like, isn't
Mm.
that a saying? When your highest points, that's when the devil comes for you, right? It's when the darkness comes for you, and it's coming for your own darkness, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's
Yes.
coming, it's trying to find that door within you where there's that shadow work. So, my lack would be the thing to go for, right? We're like,
Hmm.
um, and that's not an invite, by the way. This is just to let you know that door is closing and it's not closed already. Um, and then, yeah, I think what you're saying, Viviane, like these, as I see the beings, these negative attachments, they are, and I feel bad, right? Sometimes I feel bad. I call them very lazily negative attachments. To be completely accurate, they are beings that exhibit negative behaviors towards other beings.
Hmm.
And that we're just all on a big frequency range together. We're all somewhere between the dark and the light. Even those that perform just like humans perform negative behaviors towards others. But often I describe these negative entities as they often appear to me like if you've ever seen a shadow figure, like in the corner of your eye, or maybe you've seen a ghost or shadow figure passing in front of you. It's like they
Hmm.
exist more towards they can exist in any dimension, but they almost seem like a fourth dimensional being, and they're kind of like it's almost like they're overlaid, like the energy's stuck onto or inside of the being, and it's the human being. And it's easy to sometimes just think of I find everything so much simpler when I see us human bodies as energy first. Like we're energy and emotions, and these are the most powerful. Our consciousness and our emotions are the most powerful aspects of us, and our poor physical bodies are just doing their very best to like cope with all this emotion. And where's it go? Where's all the energy that's generated going to go? Is it going to out our mouths, or like ground it down to earth, or are we going to release it through dancing, or like what's going to happen. Our body's always trying to do its best. And where there's vulnerabilities like our shadows, those open doors, these attachments often jump on and they're like, hey, Jon, feeling a little bit of lack, don't worry. I can help. There. And it's like, oh, that's better for a little while, until you realize that it's like this like huge like thing like stuck on you. And you're like, wow, it's really horrible. And as you said, Chloe, like those feelings of being really drained. Like
Mhm.
it's just all these red flags, right? And we covered some of those in the intermediate training course, and you'd have to remind me what they were. They were red flags like looking at how glazed or dark your eyes are.
Yes.
And I think that's people often say your eyes are a reflection, they're like a window into your soul.
Yeah.
And there's what's that thing called? The iridology. Is that right? Like
Yeah,
it's a whole
iridology.
Yes.
it's a whole thing, right? You can like read someone just based on their eyes alone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, what else?
Even a lot of darkness all around the eyes and dark circles as well.
Mhm.
That's even if it's someone who doesn't sleep and overworks like that, it's such a red flag.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
like this, it's like this kind of almost like Batman or something. There's like this
Yeah.
darkness around the eyes.
Hmm.
You can see it when you look at even a photo of someone, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know why I couldn't see this before I started doing this work, because now it just seems so obvious to me. It's like you just feel that energy, almost like when someone has an attachment, it's like their frequency range becomes much lower as well. And
Yeah.
that thing you were talking about, when you're talking to someone and suddenly they're maybe triggered, or it's like this attachment is starting to have a greater influence to whatever degree that is. It's like the face change as well. Like they
Yeah.
seem
Yeah.
more unhappy.
Withdrawn.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And they kind of look at you like almost like you're not talking to that personality anymore. And
Yeah.
they're like, what are you trying to say? And you're like,
Yeah.
hang on, you're not Jon. Who are you?
And then there's nightmares, of
Mm,
course.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I would say that this isn't 100% a red flag of an entity attachment. I've had very strange experiences where I've had like a nightmare about a demon, and like me and five of my friends all had the exact same dream in the same night.
Wow.
There's like strange things that can happen, but it's like repetitive nightmares, isn't it? And sort of night terrors.
Yeah, I think any bad dream, the feeling sometimes it's like just angsty. You're like, I don't know what that dream was, but it just felt weird, all the way down to like anything with a demon in it is definitely like a really big red flag.
Mhm.
And it's just something you can, feel into and just say, well, what does that mean to me? A practice I do is pretend for a moment, like psychologically, mentally, that the dream is not contained. I'll
There's some
explain that in a
light.
minute. Let me try it. Contained. Um, oh, there we go.
There we go. Delayed.
Um, it's because one of my family members is in the little room in our garage next door, and there's a light that's shared between the two.
Oh, I see.
Um, but yeah, when like another way of thinking about it is that dreams aren't contained within a safe space of a dream. Like they're just something that you do. It's a place you actually go to. And
Mhm.
so whenever you have a dream and you're like, that was really scary, imagine saying, just removing the words, I had a dream, and saying, I went to that place and it was really scary and scary stuff happened. Complete with lighting effects. Um, so yeah, I think they can be helpful. And yeah, also like, your self-care things, the things that are good for you, the people that are good for you, they start to go really badly wrong, right? They're like, I can't meditate anymore. I don't like the people I'm around anymore. Like
Yeah.
all those things can be red flags.
Yes.
It's
I
like that
experienced.
deflective energy again, isn't it? Like just deflecting everything.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, like blaming others as well. It's not my fault that, all my friends don't like me.
Yeah, going to isolation somehow. I experienced the nightmare, the non-stop nightmares for a long time, and now that I am clearing my energy and taking care of my energy. This happens rarely. So when it does, then it's a bit of a red flag for me. And just like you mentioned, Chloe, I know if I exhausted all of a sudden for no reason, and it's like it's been a couple of days, then yeah, there's something going on. So that's a big red flag for me.
Mhm.
And I feel um one of the best things you can do as well is like surprising yourself. You know, the worst enemies, or maybe the best
Mm-hmm.
defense, if you like, is to be unpredictable.
Yes.
So I'm always like my lights in the room is like, surprise, John, surprise. Like, there's a shadow, there's a shadow,
Yes.
there's a shadow, there's a shadow. Is there a shadow? And what I do is I'll do things like and it's become harder now. I do this work day in, day out with a lot of client sessions, is I'll kind of say to myself, like, you kind of lull yourself into a false sense of security, and you say to yourself, uh, I'll do that shadow work tomorrow. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be fine.
Yes.
And
Mm.
then I'll do it when I wake up in the morning. And then just when I go to bed, I'm lying in bed. It's like, no, you do it now. And like, surprise. And you know, at least doing it once a week. And includes like clearing. So shadows are almost like the darkness within you, and then the negative energies are the things that are from the outside that attach to you,
Mm.
but they can attach
Yes.
inside you too. And that's where it all gets really confusing, because you can look in your heart and go, there's like a mix of things. What's my energy? What's something else? But yeah, I find just having both regular and then this kind of ad hoc surprise um,
Mm-hmm.
shadow work practice can be really helpful.
And I think it's good spiritual hygiene. I like to do it in time with the seasons, but because
Mm,
that feels good, like, say 4 times a year, to go to someone for some kind of
yeah, definitely.
spiritual healing, whether it's energy work, plant medicine, shamanic, whatever, but as long as they are dealing with the energetic realms and are certified to
Mm-hmm.
actually and experienced, very well experienced, in shifting these energies and removing them, because whether or not we are consciously aware of it, there can still be like remnants within us, especially
Mm-hmm.
even more so if we're holding space for other people, right? Then it's like the responsibility goes up by 1,000. But I would say even anyone who is consciously on a spiritual or personal growth journey, doing this work, investing in it, yes, it's expensive, but it is so worth it. Like, it is
Yes.
so worth it. It's like the ultimate important self-care is the spiritual
Absolutely.
hygiene, because if we
Mm-hmm.
don't do it and we get a long-term attachment, it can feel like we've gone back 100 steps
Mhm.
rather than moving forward, and
Yeah.
I'll put my hand up and admit to that. I've fallen back and gone down so many old past dark cycles, right? And to keep going until you get to that stage where it's like, no, actually, my worth is worth
Absolutely.
putting my self-care before anything else. And for me,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, doing it something in the cycle of the seasons, or about every 4 months, doing quite a big healing or some kind of retreat or energy work really works well for me.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. And I feel like that's a perfect segue, because as we come up on an hour, and one of my shadows is always overrunning on everything. So
Me
I'm
too.
I'm keen to
Give.
that's right. Yeah, don't
Yes.
stop giving. Oh no, do stop. Um, yeah, I would love to was I share this video. I'd love people to also if they resonate with what you guys are saying and that they're interested in
Mm-hmm.
connecting with you. What's the best way of connecting with each of you? How about you, Viviane?
Have a YouTube channel at Viviane Heller, and you may also reach me via email at vheller555@gmail.com, or you see me on Jon Binnie's channel too. So yes, that's the best way to. Also on Instagram, Viviane Heller. You find me there. That's the best way to reach out to me. Thank you.
Fabulous. And you offer a range of services, right?
Yes, quantum healing, quantum energy healing, Reiki, animal communication, and Akashic records readings and clearings.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fabulous. And Chloe, how do people connect with you?
So the best way to connect with me is either through my Instagram. That's my most active social media account, which is at mystic_hearts with a 3 and a 4 in the lettering. John, I'm sure you could share this, so
Yeah.
it's easier.
Mhm.
And then I do have a YouTube channel as well there as well. I have some free content. I do like moon readings, yoga classes, breathwork sessions, bits and pieces like that. My YouTube's quite random though. And then the best
Mhm.
place to get an understanding of me and the work I do is my website, which is heartfulhealing.uk. At the moment, my online service that I offer is a 90-minute soul expansion session, which is completely tailored to each person. So it includes a card reading, some kind of energy healing session, which could be anything just from a clearing all the way to like past life regression or whatever you need. And then some embodiment practices that you can take away with you that will help support your integration. And I also do mentorships as well to kind of add on to the soul expansion session.
Wow, fantastic. You both do so much. It's such a broad spectrum. And if you're watching, I guess you're on my channel, or I've managed to share this with Viviane and Chloe. You can visit me at jonbinnie.com. And my most popular service is the Quantum Psychic healing service online. I also do in-person sessions for psychic Swedish massage, psychic reflexology, and psychic Indian head massage. And it's such an honor to have you guys here on my channel. And it's just been really wonderful. And we didn't get to talk about hell. We can save that for another time.
That can be a whole nother hour
Yes,
It'd be a
another
series.
experience.
It'll be our hell series, the Hell Chronicles. But yeah, thank you so much for coming along. And yeah, for those of you that are new to these subjects, don't be scared. You're a sovereign, incredible soul, and know that all these concepts, even if they're new to you, they've been around for millennia, and our bodies and our spiritual and physical beliefs are often leading us in the right path. And know that if something feels right, it likely is right for you, but always check in with your heart and ask for sure. So thank you so much. I'll bring us to a close and sending
Thank
everyone so much love. Thank you. Thank you, Chloe.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Viviane.
much for having us. It
you.
was so nice to see you both.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. Take care. See
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.